veins, I've been driving this train. Years in this lane, there's no stopping this flame. Cause I came to the game and I changed it to play how I like.
What's going on, you
rearranged
guys?
it to my
Eric
own
Pringle
domain.
here,
Yeah, I got
and
what it takes.
it's my favorite time of the year when it comes to motor racing, as we are getting closer and closer to the 2022 Formula One season. So we went through what Formula One wanted to call their shakedown instead of basically a test for the new 2022 regulations and all the new cars that have come out in Formula One this year. So after the first test, I've felt like there were a couple headlines to come out of not only this test, but going into the 2022 season. So I wanted to kind of start off and talk about some of those headlines that I myself am going to be looking forward to going into the 2022 season. Going into the 2022 season, is the pecking order going to stay the same? So last year in the 2021 season, you had Mercedes and Red Bull at the very top. Then you had Ferrari, McLaren in the third and fourth spots. And then you had a real dogfight going on between teams like AlphaTauri, Williams, Alpine, Aston Martin. Then you had teams like Haas, Williams, that, kind of towards the end of the field. But going into 2022, and coming out of this first test, you really don't necessarily see the pecking order kind of shaping up yet. You've seen some really good glimpses of what potential there may be going into 2022. You've seen a resurgence from Ferrari here. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc had amazing test runs in Barcelona over the 3 days of testing in Barcelona. You had McLaren have an absolutely great run. Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo both having great runs there as well. And you kind of saw that Mercedes and Red Bull were, kind of middle of the pack. And one thing you do have to keep in mind is Mercedes has always been known to kind of sandbag their testing. They always go into new seasons, they kind of sandbag to not, have expectations too high. So I kind of feel like Mercedes may have done the same here and decided to kind of sandbag this first test. Now, granted, there's a second test coming up in just about a week and a half, maybe a little bit less than a week and a half in Bahrain, where the first race of the season is going to take place. But I'm really interested to see, once we get to that second test in Bahrain, are we going to finally see what the pecking order may really look like? Another headline that came out of the Formula One testing in Barcelona was with the 2022 cars. If you watch video, and I'll kind of put a video over the top of this, but if you watched, there were a lot of cars and you would see that they were bouncing. As you can see in the video that I'm probably going to share, as cars were going down the straight, you could see the cars, and what they called was porpoising. It looks like their shocks were so soft, like that car was just bouncing up and down. And the thing is that with these new ground effects on the 2022 vehicle, it has apparently on some of the teams, it has had this effect to where basically the car is basically trying to suck itself to the ground, and it was doing this weird bouncing down the front straightaway. And so now you've heard a lot of teams going back to address this issue. Ferrari has a potential solution already being worked on. Mercedes is working on it. Red Bull is also working on it. How is this going to affect the cars? And is this going to affect what Formula One was wanting out of these new regulations, which was closer racing? You had vehicles that could basically get one right behind the other and be able to follow without this turbulent air. And there was going to be supposedly more, wheel-to-wheel action. So is this going to affect the 2022 vehicles and how they're going to be able to race? Or is it something that the teams are going to be able to solve relatively quickly and get this, put behind them so that we can not have this as a talking point going into the 2022 season? So the third headline that I kind of wanted to speak about, and I think it's honestly, I think it's on everybody's mind, and when it comes to Formula One and it comes to just the world in general. So obviously, as we saw earlier this week, Russia attacked Ukraine, and it has had ramifications all over the sporting world, and the Formula One community is no different, as a matter of fact. Going into the third day of testing in Formula One, Haas, who has their title sponsor Uralkali, is a Russian-owned company, and they have a Russian driver, Nikita Mazepin. His father owns this Uralkali, and it is a Russian company. And since it's a Russian company, Haas did the right thing, I think, in everybody's eyes by basically taking all their brandishing off the car. They did admit, though, that they were taking the Russian colors off of the car. The red, it was basically the blue, red, and white. They basically ran an all-white livery on the third day of testing in Barcelona. Now, what kind of ramifications could we see from this? Well, we've already seen one, as Formula One and the Liberty Media Company have announced that the Russian Grand Prix has been canceled that usually gets run out of Sochi, Russia. So that's number one. Now, if you've heard interviews from Gunther Steiner and from Haas in general, they're going into meetings, as a matter of fact, probably today or if not later this week, to determine what they can do with their title sponsor. Because if you don't know, Dmitry Mazepin, who's Nikita's father, who owns this company, is considered an oligarch in Russia. And with sanctions that have been announced from several countries, from NATO, from UN, from everybody, his assets have been pretty much frozen because he's such a high, not ranking, but a high voice within Russia and with Vladimir Putin. So how does this affect the Haas Formula One team? Well, obviously, they may not be able to get paid by Uralkali, and they may not have a title sponsor. So they have to figure out whether or not they're going to drop that title sponsor, maybe look for a different one, maybe look for money elsewhere. But if they do that, they're probably also releasing Nikita Mazepin out of his contract with Haas. So going into that, who would potentially take over in the second seat at Haas? There have been names already starting to be thrown about. You've heard names of Pietro Fittipaldi, who Gunther Steiner has already made well aware that if Nikita stays with the team and he can't race in certain countries because of his basically his Russian heritage and Russian nationality, there's going to be a lot of countries that aren't going to allow Russians into their country right now. So that may potentially keep him from racing. So Pietro may be a good call here. We've heard the name Antonio Giovinazzi, who just recently last year got dropped out of Formula One from Alfa Romeo. He's now a Ferrari test driver, so he may get that seat. A name that I would love to see, because I truly think he's got a ton of talent that really could actually help this team out and help out a young Mick Schumacher, would be Nico Hülkenberg, who has basically been out of the sport on and off for the last year, probably year or two. I think he'd be the guy that I would love to bring into that team. Brings in lots of money, and also Mick Schumacher could really get some good lessons, some good teaching from Nico Hülkenberg. So that's definitely a good call that Haas can make if they have to replace a driver for the 2022 season. So let me know in the comment section down below, what are some of your other headlines going into Formula One in the 2022 season? Do you see it being another Mercedes, Red Bull, fight at the top, or do you see another team, potentially making a run to be the top team in Formula One? Let me know down in the comment section down below. As we go throughout the Formula One season, I'm going to be doing videos Formula One constantly. You're going to see a lot of videos Formula One. I'm going to cover races. I'm going to cover, big headline news. This is not just going to be the only thing on the channel, obviously, but like I said, I'm a big fan and I love talking about it. So slap a like on this, video. Also, subscribe to the channel if you are new to get more Formula One content on this channel and all the other content that I have. I may even do a Try Not to Laugh Formula One edition in the near future. But so again, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Slap a like on this video, and we will see you next time.
Ice in my veins, I've been driving this train. Years in this lane, there's no stopping.